much heart in anything before. You strut into my life and help me go for something more. Now I stand up for myself. Now I stand out from the crowd. Now I'm standing on high heels if Dad could see me now. Feed your fire to take you higher. We'll light you up like a live wire. Celebrate you to elevate you. When you struggle to stand, we'll take a helping hand. If you hit the dust, let me raise you up. When you bubble bust, let me raise you up. If you glitter rust, let me raise you up. And up. Raise you up. Feed your fire to take you higher. We'll light you up like a live wire. Celebrate you to elevate you. When you struggle to stand, we'll take a helping hand. If you hit the dust, let me raise you up. When you bubble bust, let me raise you up. If you glitter rust, let me raise you up. Raise you up. Raise you up. If you hit the dust, let me raise you up. When you bubble bust, let me raise you up. If you glitter rust, let me raise you up. Raise you up. Raise you up. Raise you up. Just me. Raise you up. Raise you up. We're the same, Charlie boy, you and me. Just be who you wanna be. Never let 'em tell you who you ought to be. Just be with dignity. Celebrate yourself triumphantly. You'll see. You'll see. Just be. Just be.
Ladies, gentlemen, and those who have yet to make up their minds. All right, now we've all heard of the 12-step program, have we not? Yes, but what you can do in 12, I want you to know that we all can do in 6. Ow, and it goes like this.
Pursue the truth.
Come on, come on.
Learn something new.
Hey.
Accept yourself and you'll accept others too. Let love shine. Let pride be your guide.
You change the world when you change your mind.
Just be who you wanna be. Never let 'em tell you who you ought to be. Just be with dignity. Celebrate your life triumphantly. You'll see, beautiful. You'll see, it's beautiful. Just be beautiful. Just be. You'll see, beautiful. You'll see, it's beautiful. Just be beautiful. Just be
In the early morning hours of June 28, 1969, a riot broke out in front of the Stonewall Inn in New York City. The violent protest became known as the Stonewall Riots.
It didn't begin at Stonewall.
Before Stonewall, we had the Daughters of Bilitis, we had the Mattachine Society.
There was the sip-in at Julius's.
And the movement in the world dates back to 1897 in Berlin with the founding of Magnus Hirschfeld's organization, which was the first gay rights group.
So if gay rights didn't begin at Stonewall, why was Stonewall important?
We have always existed. We're gonna fucking continue to exist. I'm proud of my experience as a black, Afro-Latino, transsexual male.
I only first heard about Stonewall 2 years ago. 2 years ago. Which makes me so angry because this should be taught.
I don't know when I first heard about Stonewall, but I think I always kind of heard about it in conjunction with Pride. Pride isn't just about a parade that I grew up going to as a younger person. Pride was actually about a riot against the police.
So it was almost 50 years ago. And it's amazing how the LGBT community started fighting back against oppression and transphobia.
Because of my privilege today, it's my job to educate myself on the things that they did to make this possible. You owe it to them to do that. And it's part of what you have to do as a queer person today.
The Stonewall Inn was a safe haven for the queer community.
But it was a dump.
It was a hellhole.
Dirty, rundown, mafia
A
run.
mafia sleazy bar, and they watered down drinks.
Watered down drinks.
There was a much better bar called the Cherry Lane.
The 10th of always.
Cookies.
It was Stormy DeLavier.
Marsha P. Johnson. Sylvia Rivera.
It's a question that calls attention to overlooked LGBT elders, but also...
Jason Mraz threw the first brick at Stonewall.
One of the persistent myths about Stonewall is that Marsha threw the first cocktail glass. Marsha herself said in an interview that I did with Marsha, I didn't get there until 2.
I was uptown. I didn't get downtown till about 2 o'clock, because when I got downtown, the place was already on fire and it was a raid already.
Marsha P. Johnson's friend and fellow activist Sylvia Rivera is also sometimes credited with starting Stonewall.
Sylvia Rivera is known for throwing the first bottle at the Stonewall riots.
Sylvia Rivera herself said in 2001,
I have been given the credit for throwing the first Molotov cocktail, but I always like to correct it. I threw the second one. I did not throw the first one.
And what we did is we were cheering and dancing in the street. That's not a riot.
It was just a loud and bawdy, fun group of guys until it turned into a riot.
It is called a riot, an uprising, a rebellion.
I like the word rebellion, not overthrow the government rebellion, rebellion from within.
It's tough. And the police were being rough with her, and she was really fighting back.
We have 4 independent accounts who said that this woman's fight with the police is what tipped the scales and set it all off.
She called out to the crowd, what are you doing? Why are you just standing there? Why don't you do something?
Some people say that woman was Stormy DeLavier, a lesbian who worked as a bouncer at the time. DeLavier sometimes took credit and sometimes denied her role, but so far there's been no conclusive proof of who exactly that butch woman at Stonewall was. Regardless of what Rivera and Johnson did at Stonewall, their impact on the trans and gay movements can't be overstated.
When I see people saying Marsha and Sylvia were the ones who threw the first bricks, I want to remember them in a way that feels honest, because their legacies extend far beyond that night.
However,
Smells good. We're gonna stop at these benches over here. This was my bed. This is my living room. So this is where I came when I was 13 years old. It was 1962, 63, you know, and when I first hit here, I was so fucking scared. This was Gay Alley. We were all out here, all kids. It would range from like 20 to maybe 30, 40, 50 lesbian and gay boys out here, drag queens, transsexuals.
Damon.
A pleasure. I'm Blanca. You ever consider joining a house?
What do you mean?
Well, a house is the family you get to choose. I'm a house mother. I provide a support system for my children and housing if you need it. Together we compete in the balls uptown.
So what exactly is a ball?
Balls are a gathering of people who are not welcome to gather anywhere else. A celebration of a life that the rest of the world does not deem worthy of celebration. Being able to fit into the straight white world to embody the American dream.
During the 1970s in Harlem, houses were formed within the larger drag ballroom scene. These houses serve as surrogate families, primarily for Black and Latino queer youth. Each house is led by a mother or father who also serve as guides to the ballroom community.
We're going last. The category I'll be walking is Team Face, alongside my child, Jock, and my other house child. His name is Kai. Everybody's going to be 100% no lackluster over here.
You have to have good skin, good teeth, good bone structure, and then you gotta have the attitude. So you gotta know how to sell it, and then you gotta have the key aspects of faith.
So what y'all want tonight, Cardi B or Nick?
whatever you carry with you, you leave it on that floor, you know? Whether it's suffering from illness, whether it's suffering from acceptance, whether it's suffering from not having a place to call your home, your house becomes your home.
Inspired by the up-and-coming legendary supermodel Linda Evangelista, who stole my look and who I pay tribute to in return, we are the House of Evangelista.
Abundance, do you accept this challenge?
We accept.
Girl, I'm going to eat you like an after-dinner Rolade. You got this.
Now give him some music. And pose! Bitch, we got ourselves a battle! Bring it the old way! The only way!
After the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, when a large population of the ballroom community was hit hard, the legendary balls and the houses that organized them also became a place for activism and awareness. These balls serve as an outlet for self-expression, activism, and offer a resource for gay and trans youth at risk of HIV, homelessness, abuse, and depression.
I was living in the streets out here in the Bronx. I was kicked out of my family house in the Bronx because I was gay.
I felt like a lot of us were like in hiding, and there was no way in like a million years I would think that people would be able to freely celebrate Pride, especially in the Bronx.
I definitely felt like I had a family, which I never felt before. The park was safe. The cops didn't come in and bother us that much. Stepping outside the park was a big fucking difference. Pre-Stonewall was cops. Cops. You always had to be watching your back.
It was just random. It was whoever's face they didn't like. There was this kind of right of humiliation. They would have to fully humiliate you before they could let you go.
Sexual deviancy was the main charge. But they'd tell us it was, we didn't have the 3 articles of female clothing on. Bra, panties, what the fuck was the other third piece, and how did they know I didn't have that on?
the accumulation of Stonewall was many years of seeing the police just barge in places.
Technically, they could arrest you for exhibiting homosexual behavior in public. And dancing with a person of the same sex, especially a slow dance, would fit the bill. We were not a protected class.
It didn't matter how many times they beat us up. It didn't matter how many times we'd go to jail. Get out of the hospital, get out of jail, and come right back to the same place again, because that was ours.
It was really tough being a street queen on 42nd Street. But in the Village, you thought, oh, it's okay, we could hang out and not be bothered. I felt comfortable in little, sort of dirty little places.
You'd walk up Christopher Street, you knew every fucking buddy. It was a lively neighborhood, you know, the West Village was like gay, you know. I'm gonna use those words because queer was a bad word back then. It was gay.
She wants to know how I feel. This is heaven. There's other people like me. There was a lot of transsexuals in this area. Tourists would come down in their double-decker buses taking pictures because we were all dressed outrageously. And we walked up and down Christopher Street, and we weren't afraid because we were in numbers. I started to grow here because I was free. Tell her that I'm gay. Tell her I wouldn't have it any other way.
My best friend called me and told me, I found a gay bar and they allow you to dance with men. That was the Stonewall.
Stonewall was, you know, it was always dark in there. You had to feel your way around sometimes.
The interior of the bar was horrific. I mean, they didn't have running water. So no one ordered, if you knew, no one ordered a drink in a glass. But it was ours, I mean, so who cared what it looked like?
And it was always crowded, you know, always crowded. Like you'd see queer people outside, but walking into the bars and seeing so many of us, you know, it was like, yeah, you know, like it was home.
All places that were frequented by gay people were much more diverse. There weren't many bars, and we were all under siege.
My first lover and I. We had just come back in from Washington. We were passing forged checks and whatnot, but we were making good money. And so, well, let's go to Stonewall. The police came in. They came in to get their payoff, as usual. This is what we learned to live with at that time. I don't know if it was the customers or it was the police. It just, everything clicked.
It was a crowded Friday night, but someone behind me mentioned something about a raid. And already they were taking the drag queens out.
People were dragged from the bar and were shoved into the paddy wagon.
They were pushing this queen into a paddy wagon, and I saw her heel come out and hit the cop's shoulder and push him back. He jumped in, and you could hear bone against metal. And he said, all right, you fags, you saw what you wanted, the show's over, now get the fuck out of here. We went for him. And there was enough provocation in every section. The riot was on.
The police were there in massive numbers because that's one of the first time a gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender group had ever fought back. But you can only take so much shit. Do you know what I mean?
The word started coming down into the park that there was this altercation over near Stonewall. When we got up here, it was like hundreds of people already. There was trans women, there were lesbians, there were femmes, there were drag queens, there was white, there was black, there was Asian. Everybody was fucking out here. It was a liberation. You know, we felt empowered, like You know, this is who we are. We're not going any fucking where.
And it just took a momentum of its own. There was no leaders, nothing was planned, but everything went amazingly in our favor.
About 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, they finally got the streets cleared. We went back to the park and we talked about it all fucking night. Had no idea that it was gonna blow up into, you know, gay pride.
Disturbances around the Stonewall lasted for about 3 or 4 days. I wish I could say that I had a crystal ball and I thought this was going to be the beginning of social change, but I didn't see much happening. What made the Stonewall uprising really different was that 2 weeks later, the Gay Liberation Front sent out a notice that they were organizing. We don't care if straight people accept us. We're going to be who we are, and if you don't like who we are, just get out of our way. We came up with the idea of a Pride March. We called it the Christopher Street Liberation Day March. We envisioned that people would march out of the village to the daylight of Central Park, where we would have a big party, we would have political speeches, and we would be free.
Because you see, this march was very daring, because it came in an age of violence. Kent State, the assassinations in the United States, and so this was not an easy time to form a gay march. We had to go single file so that we could elongate ourselves and look like this was a march. But what happened was, as we kept going, from the sidelines, from the streets, the people would join us. And they didn't notice right away, but it was growing. What began as a question mark downtown ended in an exclamation point. The march made us public. And we all knew it was different now. And we were going to live differently. We started to become a people.
Whether you came in today to come out, whether you came in last night to come out, whether you came in last week to come out, we are out!
Waking up to say hip hip hooray, I'm glad I'm gay. Can't repress my happiness ever since I tried your way. Gonna lay right here and greet the sun, 'cause gay time nothing's just begun. So come on, let's tumble in the hay. Do-de-do, do-de-do, oh do-de-do. Do-de-do, do-de-do, oh do-de-do.
My expectation, and that of many people of color in that moment, was that this movement would also understand that there had to be a commitment to issues beyond the ones that were clearly on the table. We are everywhere in terms of, we are every permutation of humanity in terms of identities, from race and class and gender. And what better movement to set as its vision and mission a connectedness with all of the struggles for justice. The work was cut out for us, for sure.
Let her speak. Just a moment, just a moment, just a moment. I would like to avoid any trouble. This is a day of unity for us. I want us to be happy. Y'all better quiet down. I've been trying to get up here all day for your gay brothers and your gay sisters in jail. They're writing me every motherfucking week, and you all don't do a goddamn thing for them. I have been beaten. I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way? What the fuck's wrong with you all?
I could not believe it was like a nightmare. All these white men and women were booing her.
The people have come to do something for all of us and not men and women that belong to a white middle class, white club. And that's what you all belong to. Revolution now!
Well, hello, handsome. I'll have a Manhattan, and my friend here is going to have a Malibu
rum and tab on the rocks.
This one's on me, but then you gotta go. I got 10 guys in here asking me if it's drag night.
I'm sorry, we're not in drag. We're women.
Even better. We don't like women in here. This is a gay bar.
Well, I want to see a manager.
Girl, why you always gotta pick fights you can't win?
Because these are the ones worth fighting.
I'm Mitchell, the manager. Can we speak outside where it's quieter?
How could you discriminate against me in my own community?
This bar is called Boy Lounge. We have a specific clientele. Gay, under 35.
White?
Frankly, yes. The New York City nightlife is segregated. Look, I've got a friend. She works at the Cubbyhole. I'll call her. You guys can go. You can drink free all night.
But I don't want that scene tonight.
I'm sorry. I'm not throwing a costume party.
Oh, this is not over.
Bitch, it was over before it started. Everybody needs someone to make them feel superior. That line ends with us, though. This shit runs downhill past the women, the blacks, Latins, gays, until it reaches the bottom and lands on our kind.
Sylvia and Marsha, they led the fight for transgender rights. Because in the earlier days, the lesbians and the gays, they never included transgender people. And when we say equality, equality has to be for everybody.
I could not believe that all of us who were at those protests were ignored. We really didn't exist. We were a nuisance, an embarrassment. Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Ray Rivera planted the seeds that took so long to grow and take root. They were there in the front lines. And it was just so incredible that there were people who stood back, like embarrassed. We are not one of you.
I was almost always in a state of dissonance working in the LGBT movement, even as I worked for lesbian and gay rights, that there was not a general understanding that our struggle needed to be much broader. You rolled up your sleeve and you're like, how the hell do we get these people to understand that you've got to see these connections? My experience as a woman, my experience as a lesbian, my experience as a Black person become equally important in terms of how we do this work to dismantle the whole house, to bring it all down.
Rustin was one of the most important figures in the African-American struggle for civil rights and freedom. He organized the 1963 March on Washington. He helped Dr. King translate the philosophy of nonviolence into direct action. But a lot of people don't know his name, largely because he was a gay man. My name is Walter Nagel, and Bayard Rustin was the love of my life. Bayard was open about his being gay, really from his teenage years. He just believed in being his authentic self and speaking his own truth. Bayard always said that Dr. King didn't really have a personal problem with him being gay. Dr. King really needed Bayard at different times because Bayard was a person of great creativity, great intellect, and he was doing things for the movement that really nobody else could do. After the March on Washington, he became a much more visible figure. He was really out there in the thick of the movement.
We're interested in making it possible for people to live like human beings. About the so-called disruptive child.
But as the movement took off, he needed to step back and get out of the limelight for a while so that people wouldn't be distracted by the fact that he was gay. In 1982, Bayard adopted me so that we would have some legal protections under the law. We were legal, father and son. This was a time when gay couples had no protections, no rights. Other people were maybe a little shocked. It didn't really matter to us.
And the commitment to seeing the linkages of liberation as one, it would not be one for a very, very long time. I don't think I ever had a timeline. But the work that's being done now is like, yes! It's like, you know, you won't even see the shit coming.
Intersex surgeries! Intersex surgeries!
Mic check! We're intersex and here to stay!
We are intersex from here to stay!
You can't make us go away!
You can't make us go away!
We cannot allow future generations to live with this indignity! We have a duty to fight, and we have a duty to win! End intersex surgery!
We did that action today. People showed up. People showed out.
We will be erased!
Part of it is that they can't envision us living with a non-binary body in a binary world. And you know what? That's on all of us to change. If we didn't fight back, then what are we gonna say in the future? How are we gonna write our stories? How are people gonna read our stories?
I think it's so important to preserve queer history that includes trans people and intersex people and gender nonconforming people. Because I think for me as a young person, being able to see those images of like, oh, these people look like me. I can see myself in history. I can see myself as part of a longer legacy.
I feel like I'm still fighting for everything that they were fighting for back then because sadly, yes, things have improved, but it's not like we are there yet.
60% of the trans community doesn't have an employment. We don't have access to housing. We don't have documents to live in this country. There is a lot of hate crimes. I want my community to feel safe. And that's the reason why I do this type of work.
I hope that people who need platforms and need to tell their story are given exactly that.
Hi, my name is Chella Mann, and this is my voice 1 day on T. And this is my voice 3 weeks on T.
It's 12 weeks on T. It's 26 weeks on T. 1 year on T.
Just there's so many different ways you can approach your identity nowadays, and I feel like that is also contributing to why there's another queer movement on the horizon.
I believe that queer and trans people were a manifestation of the future. I would love to see a future where all of the restrictive social structures that we see so clearly and have words for, words like white supremacy, patriarchy, colonialism, sexism, where those things have been obliterated.
People that are gonna come in the future are gonna need our words and need our experiences, just like we needed those words and experiences and truths from those who came before us.
I am fighting to hold on to the gains that we've made. The vision of the Gay Liberation Front, that people have the right to civil rights, to health care, to not be attacked.
We're fighting now for acceptance in schools. In Las Vegas, we just won a battle to let transgender people go to school as trans.
I'm still passionate about homelessness in our community. Yeah, I'm so fucking passionate about that.
I am for all the young voices who are against guns and for education, for housing.
This battle has become global, and I'm in awe of the people today have kept the battle up.
While we're here, we do all that we can to make our mark, that we were here and that we mattered, so that someone in the future can know that they mattered too.
Stonewall was a messy evening. LGBT histories are very messy. I think naming that doesn't take away from the importance of what happened.
I don't think anyone threw the first brick at Stonewall.
And at this point, I don't care who threw the first brick.
Oh, I don't think it matters.
And it doesn't matter.
Like, it doesn't matter. It's okay that we don't know.
If it wasn't a brick, it was a rock. If it wasn't a rock, it was a purse. If it wasn't a purse, it was a shoe. If it wasn't a shoe, it was a glass. If it wasn't a glass, it was a dirty look. It was all of those things. It wasn't just that day, it was days before, and it was many years after.
You need to take it and you need to process it and you need to keep carrying forward with it every single day of your life. Because we don't get to determine when we're black and when we're trans.
Gatherings. There's so much we miss right now, and it's almost like it's impossible to count all the things that are gone that we love and we miss. The street fairs, the festivals, parades, outdoor concerts, outdoor plays, things that are really a beautiful part of the year in New York City.
It's what?
Pride is canceled.
All right, I'm done.
What about the Twinks?
Pride is canceled. Like, I do all this work, and, like, you want to cancel it on me?
Guess I'm eating whatever I want now.
Because we're not gonna get a chance to slay this year, you know what I mean?
I'm gonna have to start lighting candles because this Rona needs to get out.
It's the only time that I can leave my wife and kids at home and just have fun.
I'm sorry, people are dying.
Got this, all these cute little accessories that I was planning on wearing. Yes, queen.
Cause these pictures ain't cutting it. Grandin not cutting it. No, 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 no.
I guess it's not happening this year. Oh well.
It's fine. I can grow my beard out. I can grow my eyebrows back. It's fine. Fine. It's not
With
like
Pride events from coast to coast canceled this year due to the coronavirus pandemic, many are turning to new and creative ways to be out, proud, and connected. But before I get to all of that, what is Pride about anyway? We have to go back to the 1960s before there were parades like we see today. There were riots and demonstrations that ended up sparking the gay liberation movement in the U.S. Over the years, events across the country have provided for visibility, representation, and community for people who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, trans, and more. Pride marches and celebrations have evolved as a safe place where people can feel themselves in a world that tells them they're different. Fast forward to 2020, despite the need to socially distance and keep our communities safe, the need to celebrate and support each other remains the same.
I was still kind of in the closet, so I just watched. And last year, I actually marched with my boyfriend. It was really empowering. Actually, I think it was one of the movements that made me come out to my parents.
Queer people don't deserve to just be a footnote in history books.
We have to acknowledge the people in the past and in the present who are fighting for our rights.
If there's one thing they've taught me, it's always to fight for equality, always to make sure that everyone has a voice. I think that's just in the spirit of Pride.
Being able to celebrate Pride is a privilege that not everybody in the community has, but everyone in the community should have.
Around the world, people are being persecuted for their gender identity and for their sexual orientation. We need spaces where we can talk about the issues that we still face. We need these spaces to be intersectional.
Pride is for everyone, but it's not always kind of marketed that way, I guess.
Most times it ends up being a little more white, a little more male, a little more cisgender than the community actually is.
I'm a white gay man. I represent the most visible demographic
in the LGBT community, but there's so much more we can do to celebrate men and women of colour in the community, trans people and non-binary people.
By going to Pride, I realized that there are a multitude of identities that I still have yet to be introduced to.
Still asexuals and demisexuals and other people who I'm sure I'm not even aware of yet, who haven't had any light brought to them yet.
And I think that's why Pride is so great, because it gives a whole bunch of people this visibility that they've never really had before.
I think it's important to celebrate Pride because a lot of people are still struggling to come out.
So many people have been told for so long that it's not okay to be who you are.
I'm tired of people saying asexuality is not a thing because you just haven't met the right person to have sex with, whether it be a girl or a guy or somewhere in between.
I go to Pride to create a space for myself.
It's almost as important to me as like the holidays around December, and I get this sort of giddiness, and I realize that in itself is worth celebrating.
I went to my first Pride March as this young teenager, realizing that there was this whole other community out there.
I made the decision to march at the very front of the parade, and it was the first time in my life I was ever presenting as openly gay. And I was just so scared that someone would judge me for that. That was a decade ago. Today I will happily hold my husband's hand as I walk down the street, and Pride is how I got here.
Okay, so I'm very festive today. I'm gonna share with you. I want to check in first and just see how everyone's doing. James, you're right in my view. I gotta start with you.
Yeah, no, I'm doing well. Still here in New York, and really, yeah, we're doing well. My husband and I are here in Brooklyn, and we've been attending the marches and we're right on McCarran Park, so there's a silent vigil almost every night actually. There's like 30 minutes of silence followed by a rally, so we've been doing that. But yeah, things have been going okay over here.
I don't think people understand that this is a safe space. So I think we need to reiterate that this is for us. This is because we wanted Pride Network here, so let's utilize it to the max. And I think we need to reiterate just like the structure, why we have this, the ground rules here, right? And what's our mission? So I think that'll get even more buy-in from people when we understand exactly what Pride Network at Zillow is actually about. Because right now, I think the sentiment would be like, oh yeah, they're just hosting something for Pride, right? And I don't want that to be the message, because we're doing much, much, much more than that.
Here on the 18th straight day of protests, we saw something we hadn't seen since this movement began, talking about the fight for Black trans lives. Go ahead and show you the video. I mean, it was just incredible to see. We're talking about nearly 30,000 people all dressed in white in honor of Black trans lives. It represented unity in the fight for equality, for justice, for two deeply marginalized groups in New York City. Now, the march was led by Black trans women, and we now know the names who are synonymous with this movement. We're talking about Remy Fells, whose body was found in a Philadelphia river, and Rhea Moten, who was found shot to death in Ohio. There were protests near Trump Tower. They marched to the Trump Hotel, and they brought flowers in memory of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Nearly 3 weeks into this movement, and there's no signs of stopping.
Good morning. We have breaking news from the Supreme Court. It is a landmark decision for the LGBTQ community. The justice is ruling that it is illegal for workers to be dismissed from a job based on sexual orientation and gender identity. NBC Justice correspondent Pete Williams joins us with all the details. Pete, what can you tell us?
Well, this is a stunner, frankly, coming from this conservative Supreme Court that no longer has Anthony Kennedy among the justices, the man who wrote all the gay rights decisions before. But today, the Supreme Court has ruled that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which makes it illegal for employers to fire employees on the basis of sex, also covers sexual orientation.
Monday was a rallying cry for advocates of LGBTQ rights in the workplace. Tonight, those advocates are celebrating after the Supreme Court ruled the 1964 Federal Civil Rights Act protects employees from being fired for being gay or transgender. Here's CBS's Jan Crawford.
There was a quiet moment of joy at the court over the landmark ruling that extends the promise of the Civil Rights Act to millions of LGBTQ employees. And supporters quickly took to Zoom, reacting with jubilation.
Today is a landmark victory for LGBTQ equality.
Today's decision expands the American promise of liberty and justice for all.
I'm elated.
Please don't make me wait, 'cause I don't wanna break, no, I don't wanna fall. When you're next to me, pretend I'm not afraid to be. You don't make me wait, and let me break, you
I'm happy to celebrate this victory, as I said, with the entire LGBTQ community. And again, hope it serves as a little bit of light in what we've been referring to as kind of some dark days. And, you know, I did nothing wrong. And now I have some validation in that by the opinion that was given today. And for me, the journey continues. When I lost my job, it was my dream job. So imagine having that that you went to every day and you enjoyed doing it, and then to have it suddenly taken away from you because you decided to join a gay recreational softball league. I lost my income. I mentioned that I had lost my insurance while I was still recovering from prostate cancer. I lost friends and relationships with many colleagues. I had to sell my home in that community. So the journey's been difficult.
This is absolutely a landmark case and a very important recognition of legal equality in the LGBTQ community. We are fighting and struggling with systemic racism, systemic discrimination, and that is a fight that absolutely must continue. There are too many voices that have been silenced or ignored for too long. So while we are certainly heartened by this decision, I am certainly very pleased for what it means for Gerald and all Americans. We have a lot of work to do. So there's a fight to be carried forward.
We are the generation of game changers,
rule breakers,
change shifters, and go-getters.
We self-define, realign, and become the change we want to see.
We are our past, standing on the shoulders of revolutionaries that changed the narrative.
We are a representation of that narrative.
We are the change we want to see.
We are the future.
The future makers of policy,
enforcers of equal rights,
the right to choose, the right to show up in this world as uniquely you.
All encompassing.
The future is...
The future is unrestricted.
Precious. Dynamic. Latinx.
Everyone accepting everyone.
The future is Black equity.
The future is our kids.
The future is non-binary.
The future is mindful.
The future is accessible. The future is bountiful. The future is human rights.
The future is not hiding my wigs when I have a random guy come over.
The future is non-assuming.
The future is the past.
The future is waiting.
The future is inclusive.
The future is...
The future is...
The future is... The future is...
The future is ours to define.
Your faith in me, and I was challenged to be strong. When I lost my way, you were there. heart in anything before. You strut into my life and help me go for something more. Now I stand up for myself. Now I stand out from the crowd. Now I'm standing on high heels that Dad could see me now. Feed the fire to take you higher. We'll light you up like a live wire. Celebrate you to elevate you. When you struggle to stand, we'll take a helping hand. If you hit the dust, let me raise you up. When you bubble bust, let me raise you up. If you glitter rust, let me raise you up. And raise you up. Woo! Feed your fire to take you higher. We'll light you up like a live wire. Celebrate you to elevate you. When you struggle to stand, we'll take a helping hand. If you hit the dust, let me raise you up. When you bubble up, let me raise you up. If you glitter rust, let me raise you up. Raise it up. Raise it up. If you hit the dust, let me raise you up. When you bubble bust, let me raise you up. If you glitter rust, let me raise you up. Raise it up. Raise it up. Raise it up. Just me. Raise it up. Raise you up.
We're the same, Charlie boy, you and me.
Just be who you wanna be. Never let 'em tell you who you ought to be. Just be with dignity. Celebrate yourself triumphantly. You'll see. You'll see. Just be. Just be.
Ladies, gentlemen, and those who have yet to make up their minds.
All right, now we've all heard of the 12-step program, have we not? Yes, but what you can do in 12, I want you to know that we all can do in 6. Ow, and it goes like this.
Pursue the truth.
Come on, come on.
Learn something new.